Hey everybody, hope you're doing well. Today's video was originally going to be Last of Us cut content, but after the release of episode 2 of the show, I felt I needed to talk about this. I needed to change gears and focus on the show. And it's because, I'll just be straight up, the Joel Miller death and these first 2 episodes in general felt really hollow and really just lacked any kind of punch or effect for people like me who have played the games and for people who haven't. But why is this? Well, I think I have a clear as day, damn near mathematical reason why it doesn't work. But for that, I'm gonna need a visual aid. So we're actually gonna head. So for that, we're going to a classroom, because I'm going to break down very clearly exactly why, on a fundamental level, The Last of Us Season 2, Episode 2, and 1 to an extent, fail on a basic storytelling level. But first, I need to draw off what we're going to be using throughout this entire video. I forgot my 2 reversals. If you're someone who's studying storytelling in any capacity, whether you are new to it or have been doing it for years, you know exactly what this is. This is basically the most tried and true, in my opinion, form of story structure. This is what you have in the back of your mind whenever you're plotting something out, or even down to actually writing the specific script. But what exactly does it mean? So there's different sections to it. Most people just know the whole beginning, middle, and end. That's what they teach you in elementary school in English. That's not the whole story, because there's a lot of things along the way that are what really make a story work. So first, you have your normal world. This is where we are currently at the beginning of the story, when we're introduced to these characters. So in Lord of the Rings, Frodo in the Shire, you learn about the world itself, and you also learn about the character, the flaws they have, the needs that they may have, things like that. With Frodo, you see him in the Shire running around. Luke Skywalker, for example, he is on Tatooine and he wants more, he dreams of more. That whole sequence where we see him just living his life, that's the normal world, before anything insane happens. This is an opportunity to show how things are and sort of set the status quo so then it can be broken later. Then we have this corner here, the inciting incident. So what that is basically the beginning of your story. It's when a problem is introduced that your protagonist has to deal with. There's no running away from it. For Luke, this would be running off with Obi-Wan because he has to go save the princess, and now he has nothing left on Tatooine, and that's what sends him on the journey and gives him the motivation to become a Jedi. For Frodo, this would be coming into possession of the ring and needing to help take it to Mordor to get it destroyed. This is where everything begins. This slope here is what most people would call your rising action, but what I really want to talk about are these 2 dashes here. These are typically called your reversals or your reveals, whatever you want to say. The terminology is a little different. I like to call them reversals. Now, what a reversal is a new piece of information or an attempt at solving the problem that the protagonist has uncovered at the inciting incident, but failing at it because they haven't learned their lesson yet. They haven't changed or evolved yet, or done what they've needed to do. Even small scenes can be considered a reversal if you really want to break it down enough, because there can be reversals within reversals. You can really sort of kind of go nuts when it comes to breaking down exactly what's going on in a script. However, I typically like to stick to 2 very big reversals. There are many different takes on story structure, but all of them can fall into this sort of outline. So this would be a challenge for Frodo, something like the Mines of Moria. Or for Luke Skywalker, this would be entering the Death Star in order to save the princess. You have your 2 reversals, you have your rising action, and then we get to this part. Everybody knows what that is. That's your climax. But I think people forget what a climax is supposed to be. The climax is the culmination of all of the tension, all of the things that we've seen and learned along the way with these reversals. It's the culmination of that. And this is also typically where the protagonist overcomes the antagonist or whatever threat or force they are against. Overcoming that force through the use of new information or a new tool that they've learned along the way. which is why their attempt at succeeding works here instead of back here. Or the new information that they learn in these reversals ends up aiding them in this part up here. So a perfect example would be Luke in the Death Star run. He's flying in and he realizes he's not going to rely on the computer. He's instead going to follow Obi-Wan's advice and just trust the Force. Because in an earlier moment, we see that he doesn't trust the Force when he's doing that little training ball thing, and it doesn't work for him. So he instead learns from that mistake, and that leads to him successfully destroying the Death Star, and thus winning. Another thing is your climax can also include big moments for your other characters. Obviously, you've got side plots and you've got reversals and stories for your background characters running parallel to your main character. So Boromir in Lord of the Rings has his big moment right here, whereas earlier on we see him dealing with his greed related to the ring, as well as some of his human arrogance, that kind of thing along the way. But then he ends up sacrificing himself for the survival of everyone else. So then we've got our falling action and our new normal. Your falling action is basically just helping to resolve any leftover lines, that kind of thing. It's after the big moment in your finale. And then this is primarily showing the new normal. Whether literally or figuratively, you return back to the world and you see how it's changed and how your protagonist has changed in it. The prime example is Frodo returning to the Shire and not really fitting in because he has changed with all the things he's seen out there. With Luke, it would be returning afterwards and becoming a hero, being given this medal. He's no longer just this nobody farm boy. He's a hero because he saved the day. So this is the tried and true method when it comes to screenwriting, or really writing any stories. You can apply almost any story, any video game, to this structure because it works. Simple as that. Now, when it comes to TV, it's a little more interesting because, like I said, you can have parallel plots running with your side characters, but in TV, you sort of get a little inception with it. So this could be the outline for one episode, and then you have to think the next episode needs to build off of this new normal that we've established. It then continues, we see what happens, that kind of thing. And then the show itself should have an overarching theme similar to this that roughly follows that. And really with any show or movie, you have smaller iterations of this in specific scenes. That's how you build tension in a natural way. You need to break the status quo and then return to it and then build on that. Now, why did I just go over all of that? Well, it's because Joel's death in The Last of Us Season 2 fails on a fundamental structural level, which is why it feels so hollow and lacks any sort of tension or urgency at all. So let's first look at the game and how it follows this structure and show why it works. So why does the game work? Because it follows this structure even for as small of a beat as Joel's death. So you've got your normal world. This is Jackson. This is Ellie and Dina and Joel and how everything works. They go on these patrols. Ellie and Joel have this sort of strained relationship, but we don't really know why. It's setting the status quo of how things are currently and how it has been since we left off in the first game. The other thing it sets up in this normal world is that there is this mysterious group with this girl Abby who's jacked as hell and all these other people who are looking for somebody who is in Jackson. We don't know anything about them other than, hey, there's these random people here who are looking at the outside of Jackson. So then we've got our inciting incident. This would be Ellie and Dina having to go out on patrol, and for Abby, this would be her conversation with Owen, where they sort of have that bickering and she decides, you know what, I'm just gonna go off on my own, and she leaves. So then we have our first reversal. For Ellie and Dina, this would be them going through the supermarket fighting those infected. We learn more about their relationship, such as Dina not knowing that Ellie isn't infected. And we also learn how Ellie herself fights in a much more quick and not really that kind of brute way. Then running parallel to that, we have Abby, who also runs into infected, and we see combat with her. What new information is revealed at this first reversal? For Abby, it would be that she is someone that we need to be concerned about. She's very strong and she's good at combat. So that aids in the building of tension. We already know that she's after someone in Jackson, right? Now we learn that she's physically imposing and she's good at fighting. Then we've got our second reversal. So the tension needs to keep building from there. What we've got now is the storm has begun to roll through, which sort of sets this sort of unsettling tone. For Abby, this big reveal, this new piece of information, is her encountering Joel and Tommy. So now, this character that we know is physically dangerous, who's looking for someone from Jackson, has friends with weapons and ammunition, has just encountered two characters that we really care about. And on top of that, they're in this backdrop of this storm that has cut off all communication. There's no way out. And better yet, she has told them, hey, I've got friends, I've got people back at the ski lodge. And you're wondering, okay, are they actually going to help, or is this some sort of thing we should be worried about? Either way, you have that tension that has been building. For Dina and Ellie, their reversal comes a little later. With these sort of parallel plot structures, they're never perfectly in sync. For them, I would say that it is when Jesse shows up and delivers the information of, we haven't heard from Joel or Tommy at all. Because that presents a new piece of information for both Ellie and the audience thinking, oh crap, something bad is happening, and Ellie's going to see something bad. So you're just getting more and more nervous. And then finally, our climax, as you can probably guess, the point of most tension where we finally figure it all out, is when Abby gets Joel back to the ski lodge, says she knows who he is, and then shoots him. That scene is the perfect execution, the perfect sort of release of all the things that we've been learning along the way. Think about it this way. First we learn, hey, there's these random people who are looking for someone. Hey, this girl's really good at fighting and very driven to find whoever it is she's looking for. Hey, this same person just ran into two characters that we really, really care about and offered to help. And then boom, it all comes together. The sort of drip feed of information finally comes together as you realize in about the same time as Joel does that, oh my god, these people are looking for him and they want to kill him. It really is the best way that they could have executed basically revealing all this stuff at once, because it's all laid out for you, technically, but it's sort of obscured from you until it's too late. And when it's also too late for Joel to realize as well. And then the best thing is, even upon a rewatch, you notice these things. You know who they're talking to, so the dread also builds. It's a double-edged sword here. Then you've got your falling action. That doesn't just mean, oh, everything goes back to normal. Even though that's kind of how I phrased it earlier, this is more so, like I said, tying up those loose ends. So this is where Ellie ends up seeing everything happen, she gets knocked out, and then our new world is, we now live without Joel. Joel is gone, he's dead, and what is Ellie going to do with it? And what that does is it sets up another inciting incident and reversals for her to go off to Seattle and do what she needs to do. Because now she wants to leave to go off and do that. So it perfectly builds it up. And the other thing is, the information here is what we need to know. It's not too much. Abby doesn't stop and monologue and say, this is exactly why I am here. It leaves us just in the dark enough that we are motivated, just like Ellie, to go find out and to go on this next step of the journey. So to sort of recap, we've got it all written out here. Now, why does this work? It works because the drip feed of information is very, very well thought out. We are asking ourselves the right questions at the right time when the writers want us to be asking. We're wondering the right things about, well, who are they looking for? And then we kind of forget about that, and then it comes back just as, oh wait, they just encountered Joel. Are they looking for him? Is she telling the truth? That kind of thing. And then the sudden realization, that final blow of, oh my god, they were looking for him. There's no help now, especially with the backdrop of the storm that was set up earlier. It all just creates this sense of dread, this sense of unease, and this build of tension that works so well. And it's why that scene is so impactful as is. And that slow build of tension, that build-up of just the little pieces of information, is what the show gets horribly, horribly wrong. As you all know, the show opens with Abby blatantly saying, we're gonna go kill Joel. And then the episode ends by showing, uh-oh, the person who said she was gonna come get Joel, yep, she's near Jackson. The problem with flat out stating Abby's intentions from the get-go is that it takes away your ability to have these reversals, these new pieces of information that build the tension. By just flat out saying what her intentions are, you take away any sort of mystery, any sort of wonder of, oh, well, what is she going to do? Who are they looking for? And it makes the audience feel unengaged, especially if you know what's going to happen. But people who haven't seen the game or haven't played the game also agree that there's a lack of tension in this build-up. Things like seeing the group talking in the cabin, like seeing Abby run off and try to go to Jackson or jump one of the patrols on her own, it doesn't make you feel anything or make you wonder or make you think at all, because you already clearly know her intentions because it was stated all the way back here. The other thing that it's missing, because it's given us this information already, but it's also not telling us anything new about Abby with each of these steps. We don't see Abby fight, we don't really see her interact with the group in a way that says she's the one in charge and we should be worried about her. If they want us to dread her coming after Joel more by just flat out saying, hey, I'm coming after Joel, give us a reason to. They never show her being imposing or dangerous in any of these scenes. She's running away from infected, she's falling down a mountain, and I get that. That's to make her appear more human. Like I said in my previous thing, they just want to kind of avoid some of the hate. But in terms of story structure, it doesn't help. We don't get any new reveals along the way. We also know nothing about her. And so in turn, the lack of any tension, any build-up from the Abby side of things, then makes the final scene that much less impactful. Not to mention the way and the differences in how those scenes were executed. The reason part 2 works is because the execution was so sudden, you hardly had time to think about it until you realized all the stuff that you had been told throughout this section have all come together and now you understand. The suddenness of her turning around, shooting Joel, and that's that. She doesn't get to have her little speech. All you know from her quip to him about saying, I know who you are, and him being like, who are you? And she's like, guess. And then he doesn't allow her to sort of get that little monologue off. That works for the better because we're still in the dark. We are just as in the dark as Ellie, as Joel himself. We don't know what's happening or who these people are, but we understand they're after him, and this is bad. And what that also does is for the future, when we're following Ellie, we understand and are able to really empathize with her and want to see this resolved. We want to see her go after these people. And we also want to keep watching and want to keep playing because we just want to know why. It also just makes the emotional side of things that much more impactful. In real life, when you lose a loved one, it often doesn't make sense. It never makes full thematic sense or come full circle, that kind of thing. And that mimics perfectly the tragic suddenness of death. And I think it does it very well. So you contrast the climax with what we get in the show, which is Abby giving a monologue where she explains beat by beat exactly why she's doing what she's doing, and we have one moment of her yelling at Mel saying she's going to kill somebody, but then they decide to waste their, what I would assume is precious medical supplies on subduing someone. They could just kind of, pop her on the head, I guess. But that little detail aside, her explaining her motivations right there could work. However, it doesn't because we already know this information. We were shown at the beginning of both episodes exactly why she's after him, and even more detailed who he killed specifically that makes her want to go after him. So there's nothing new revealed when she's monologuing about all the 18 soldiers he killed and how my dad was one of the people you killed and blah, 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 blah. There's nothing new. So it's boring. We already know this. People who have watched the show even know this at this point in time. So it just ends up losing all of its oomph. All of the wind, all of the tension that could have been set up is completely lost because of how they decided to deliver their information, because they did it all wrong. Now, what were their intentions with delivering the information in this way? I can't say. In my previous video, I discussed some of the changes that they made, particularly to Abby's character, as being in order to mitigate any sort of hate towards her, the actress or the character. And that's probably it here as well, because it seems like we'll be doing more of a dual narrative kind of thing throughout this show. We'll be seeing Abby in WLF while also seeing Ellie trying to track her down, which will be interesting to see just how close they are throughout the entire story, because that's something in the game you can kind of pick up in hindsight. But they want to lay the groundwork for people to start liking her earlier on, rather than save it for later and actually have a good reveal. This is a side note. I also feel like this show really has a problem with like baiting for awards, because you have two monologues that just come out of nowhere, and then they also do that really basic screenwriting trick where you introduce an idea at the beginning of the conversation is about something else, and then before the character leaves they repeat the thing that they said at the beginning. Maria does it when she's talking to Joel about building faster and bringing in new people. It's also done in another scene. Like it's kind of getting old, I guess. So it really seems like they're kind of just reaching for awards, and they want people to really like Abby and Ellie equally, instead of telling a very well done and interesting story. They just are vomiting all the information. So it's like, no, see, she has a reason to do it, guys. It just doesn't work. It doesn't work on a basic structure level. Like, I can put this on a board like math and explain, I don't care about this because you told me this all the way back here, so none of this really matters. You know, and I also have smaller, more nitpicky issues with the death itself. The visual effects they used for the final like stab just felt really weak, and then you have her punching him, yet this version of Abby is much, much weaker. She's also the smallest out of her group. I mean, Mel is taller than her. I honestly think the actress who plays Nora would make a better Abby, in all honesty. And once again, I said at the beginning, I love Caitlin Dever, she's fantastic. But I don't think she was right for this. But you want to know what the most interesting and almost disappointing thing is that there is a plot line so far that follows this perfectly and is really, really compelling. And it's the plot line about the Horde coming to Jackson. I'm not going to fully plot it out right now, but it follows it perfectly, and the tension builds very well, and then the final climax, which is the battle in Jackson, works really well because of how they released that information, how they showed things happening. Because, you know, first they tease about, oh, they're smart infected, that's really weird, and then you continue and it's like, oh, there's stuff in the pipes, and then you see Abby fall on the group and they sort of rise up, you see them preparing. But imagine, instead of that, they just said at the beginning, a Horde is coming to Jackson. And then they showed all that stuff anyway, and you're like, yeah, I know what's coming. You already told me at the beginning. It's just kind of baffling to me that the original plot, the new plot exclusive to the show, works well and follows this, yet the plot that is handed to them on a silver platter doesn't. It really shocks me. So all that to say, on a fundamental level, on a nearly mathematical level, you ask anybody about story structure, story beats, they will tell you the same thing I'm telling you. It doesn't work. They didn't build tension properly, and that's why it feels so hollow. So thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate every single one of you. I know this was a little different, but let me know what you think in the comments about the plot of the show so far. How do you feel about what I'm saying here? Do you agree? Do you disagree? So yeah, just let me know. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate every single one of you, and I hope you have a good morning or evening or, you know, whatever.